Talk Radio. You're in to all things music.
It was a world tour. We played Rochester, and we came into our dressing room, and there was a naked girl laying on our dressing table where the makeup is, covered in fruit. And she's like, "I'm here, boys. You can do whatever you want to do to me." Like, it was unreal.
Welcome to Making It with Terry Woolman, the show that explores the secrets, successes, and strategies for making it in the music biz. And now, here's your host, Terry Woolman.
Welcome to Making It with me, your host, Terry Woolman. I appreciate so much all of you joining us every week. I truly do. And I know I say that every week, but that's because I mean it. You can find all of our episodes on entertalkmedia.com, Spotify, and iTunes podcast under Making It with Terry Woolman. I created this show to focus on what it takes to have a lasting career in the ever-changing landscape of the entertainment business and the music business. And I've got the perfect guest today on this show to take a walk down that road and really get his perspective. My guest today, Eric Red, really, he got his start. He first started getting attention around the age of 12, growing up in L.A. as one of the youngest dancers on the L.A. club scene when he was discovered by one of the nation's top choreographers. And then he went on to become a Soul Train dancer while still in high school. So let me start by reading a little bit of Eric's bio to give you an idea of his background. Eric Red is an American recording artist, songwriter, and dancer. He was a regular on Soul Train before moving into music. After graduating high school, Red won a scholarship to the California Institute of the Arts, where he studied dance. Then, after turning down a position in the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater's second company, he spent a year with the Winnipeg Contemporary Dancers before moving to Paris, where he joined Roland Petit's Ballet de Marseille. After touring with the company for 2 years, he left to appear in the original German cast of Cats. Red has shared the stage with an A-list artist roster, including Andrea Bocelli, Harry Connick Jr., Kool and the Gang, Lionel Richie, and Cirque du Soleil. He has also been a featured performer opening for Paul McCartney, the Pointer Sisters, Dionne Warwick, Thelma Houston, and Stevie Wonder. Since childhood, Eric never lost sight of a dream of one day producing and performing in his own stage show. Never losing his love for dance, he has fused singing, dance, and showmanship and made his dream a reality. Eric Red, welcome to Making It.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting to hear your life out of someone else's mouth. I was like, oh my God, who's he?
Yeah, it is pretty incredible. You know,
wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
What's it like just to take that all in? I know the experience. I get what you're saying, and most of my guests have the same experience. But what's yours? I mean, just to hear me just give a broad stroke of all the amazing things that you have accomplished. You know,
I'll tell you something. Here's what's really funny. At the beginning of my career, you make up stuff and you lie because you want to sound like you've done more.
Well, you have to fill a whole page.
Right, exactly. And I think one of the funniest things was I was listening to this trying to think of which part I had lied about. And I was like kind of surprised that it was all the truth. And I thought, because, I've been doing it so long that it was really funny that it was really all the truth. Like I could check off the boxes of each person you were talking about and say, yeah, I really did do that. Yeah. So that's a very interesting thing. And I'll tell you one other reason why it's so reflective to me today is that one of the record companies that I'm working with, the longest record company I've been working with, they released a remix of the song you opened with, Push, because Push has been very good to me this year, and they did yet another remix that was released on a compilation. It came out on Friday, and so I happened to flip over to iTunes just to take in the other things on the compilation, and I try to make sure that I stay grateful that this is happening still for me. And so the page popped up of all of my records, and I counted, and I realized that this release last Friday was my 22nd release. And I thought, this is the part you need to sit your little butt down and live in some gratitude. 22 records. And I'm counting a CD as one release, but between remix compilations and that there's been 22 releases that pop up on iTunes in any configuration. And I thought, sometimes it's good to just take that in and go back to that moment when you just wanted to have one record. You just had to have one little old record out with your name on it so that you could say you were doing this. And
don't you remember that first one? I'm thinking of mine right now as you're talking.
My very first was not released. I did a demo. No, I did a demo that turned into a record called Moon of Malaysia. and it was a dancey thing that was done in Hamburg while I was doing Cats. And it turned out that they held on to it, and they held on to it for too long, and I ended up moving out of Hamburg. So my actual first release was my first record deal, which was Jive Records. But that Moon of Malaysia was that first demo that had turned into a record, and they actually sent me the pressed copy, but it never came out. But I remember, I think the first record, the first time you're in the studio is one thing, but my big excitement of this career recording wise was the very first record deal, because it came so unexpected, and it was such an insane kind of gift from God at a time where I had begged for that and had given up on it. And it just popped into my life one day sitting in a bar. And, I always think that that's the wonderful thing. I was actually broke and just coming out of Starlight Express, the musical, and in a bar in London. And weirdly enough, it was in a straight bar, and this guy tried to pick me up. And I said something very catty to him, like, I don't need somebody to pick me up. I need a lawyer and a record deal. And he turned back to me and said, I can do that. And wow. I thought, yeah, whatever. And he said, no. He handed me his card. He said, if you're a real singer, send me your tapes. I thought, yeah, sure. So have a drink, click the glass. I walk out the door, and I think, what do I have to lose? Send him the tapes. And as God is my witness, I was sitting in that guy's office 7 weeks later, signing my first record deal.
Wow.
Whoever thinks that you say something flippant, right, and it actually is realized? It's absolutely realized.
Yeah, the truth is always just right under the water, right? Yeah, just beneath the joke or or whatever the response is. Yeah, the truth is always
to the point, which is so funny because this is the 90s, and what was so amazing about it was the thing then, and you'll remember this of doing record deals back then, the contracts were 300 pages, and this tells you how fast we are in technology, that at one point, I'm in a major legal office now. So the secretaries are bringing me coffee and they're whatever I want. And they're basically saying they're going to bring lunch because you're going to be here for full days. Mm-hmm. And by the time we're in the middle of the second day, I'm just in tears. I can't, because the legal jargon is just way past what I can take. I think I'm about 28 or 29 or so. I'm just like, it's way outside of my league. And the funniest part,
even if you did have a legal background, which I don't either. I mean, some musicians do, but they're still filled with inconsistencies and mistakes.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of these 300-page contracts or 50-page contracts are done by paralegals, and they're just copying and pasting, from various different contracts, and they contradict each other.
And you know that, like, back then, I was signing for, because, you're talking about percentages, because that's all it is really negotiating percentages.
Right.
And they were doing, this is crazy. I'm really getting ready to date myself. We were getting ready to do a percentage on something called a CD, which hadn't come around yet. A CD-ROM hadn't come around, a mini disc, there were all of these things they were talking about that hadn't been invented yet, but they were in idea stage and they were in recording contracts. Streaming wasn't even an idea then.
Oh, no.
That's just how far we've come. If you can imagine that I was negotiating a CD and I'm like, what's a CD?
Right.
And here we are, and it's done.
And did you have legal guidance? Did you have an attorney to look this over with you, or you were really doing this on your own?
I was sitting with the lawyer. The funny thing was the lawyer that had tried to pick me up was a lawyer for record companies. That's what he did. That's what's so ironic, is that he worked with Sony and Jive and all these different people. And, that's how he made his money, was finding people don't realize that back in the day, lawyers were the ones that found the people that they signed.
Right.
There were no showcases really and all that. You had to find a lawyer that was hooked up with a record company, and he kind of walks you in.
Right.
And it's, who knew?
So I want you to, before we talk about your early childhood, there's one thing that I know about you. There's a few things I know about you, but one is this story that you told me, and I would love for you to share it. And it's because I think this was really a pivotal moment for you, and it's when your parents took you to your first concert when you were a young boy, and it was Diana Ross and the Supremes at the Forum. Can you share that story? Because I think it's just fantastic. I can picture the whole thing happening.
Yeah. And I've never forgotten it. And the first thing I actually want to say to people is that this story that you're getting ready to hear, I've actually met Diana Ross. I've met her children. Bumping into them, I was very good friends with the music director, and I'm friends with her current music director. And I've never told her or anybody because at this age, I'm still such an insane Diana Ross fan because of this story. And I work somewhere in between being in awe of the fact how I feel about her as an artist and embarrassed because sometimes I don't like fan worship, but I just have that where she's concerned, and I always do. And I find that I'm still able many, many years later to look at her for hours on YouTube and be in awe of the career that this woman has created and the path that she has done for the rest of us as artists, because she was 21 or 22 while this was all happening. But I'll take you back. So my parents knew I was a big Supremes fan. They were into Isaac Hayes and jazz and all this other. And so I grew up in Inglewood, California, which is down the street from a place called the Forum. It's called the Fabulous Forum. And it had a lull for a while, and it's back in action doing concerts again now. So my parents bought me tickets to see Diana Ross and Supremes. And funny enough, they got me front row seats. We had front row seats. And that was when the Forum was in the round. So oddly enough, and the odd thing about it was because it was in the round, the artists came on the stage from different ports, because it's like, if you remember how like those basketball stadiums are, the players come from all these different ports that are on the side. And we happened to have seats on the port of the dressing room of Diana Ross and the Supremes. So she would walk right by us to go to the stage. So that in itself was unbelievable. During that concert, they had a special guest, the young boys she had discovered called the Jackson 5. So they came on and did I Want You Back. And she, we got to see something as a preview. And after they went off, Diana Ross decided, let's have all the kids come on the stage. So if there were kids in the audience, and now think about it, this is this late 60s, I think it's 69. So there's not a ton of kids in the audience because this is an adult concert.
Yeah.
But there's a few younger ones. And so she says, the kids in the audience, bring them on the stage. Well, remember, I'm by the port that is the dressing room of how she got on the stage. So I'm the first kid onto the stage. My parents were like, go. So I run up on the stage. And what's so incredible about this memory is that there is a picture of Diana Ross and Michael Jackson on the back of the first Jackson 5 album. And so I have had this incredible reference to this moment in my life where she brought me up, they're playing the music, and she says, dance with me, baby. And I'm looking up at Diana Ross, and it's the very first time in my life I see pancake makeup, false eyelashes. I knew it was a wig because my mother wore wigs. She's skinny. She has on a halter dress and a big smile. And so when that moment is over and the band comes out, she says, what's your name? And I say, Eric. And she puts the mic at my mouth and she goes, you're a really good dancer. And she kisses me on the cheek and she goes, where are your parents? And I point to them and she goes, he's wonderful. And I go down to my parents. I've had a moment with the biggest star in the world at that moment, because the Supremes were the biggest black superstars at that moment, and I just got to dance with her. And I tell you, if there was ever a moment in my life that said, that's what I want to do, that's what I want to do. But there was a very funny moment because somewhere in the next piece of my years, I kind of wanted to be her. And so, it kind of didn't stop just there, only because, and I will tell you this, it wasn't, I wanted to be her as a female. I wanted to be larger than life. I wanted what she taught me in that moment with the lashes and the wigs is that you create entertainment. You aren't just yourself. And if you were to see me now as a performer, 25, 30 years later, I create a performer. The Eric Red that walks into the grocery store isn't the Eric Red that you're going to see at 8 o'clock at night. And I always believe I got that from that moment, because that was the moment that taught me that entertainment is much bigger, much larger, much more put on than what you actually see. And I'm really, really grateful for it. I'm really, really grateful for it, because who knew that what would be 8 years from that moment, I was going to be on Soul Train and I was going to be in front of a camera every week. So that's my break into the industry moment.
So when you were, by the way, I think Miss Ross would really get a kick out of hearing that story. If I'm not going to, that's for you, but I would encourage you to tell her if you have an opportunity.
I might.
Yeah.
I might.
Well, you know better than I.
You know what? It's not something that I hold away from her.
Sure.
It's that I probably just have to stop myself from crying the few times that I've met her, the emotions get really high. Yeah. And she's very gracious and she's very sweet. And she's also very little.
And you are very tall.
Yeah. I'm 6'3" and Diana Ross is 5'4".
And you've got another 4 feet of hair on top of that.
Yeah, and so there's a part that I get reduced to the 8-year-old, and she becomes 6'3". Right. But one day.
So you're mentioning Soul Train, and I want for people to know how that happened. And you had already been taking dance classes or dancing, and you were dancing. Were you taking any formal classes, or you were just dancing?
I come from a dancing family. I come from and not dancers. I come from one of those black families where you turn the record on and everybody dances. Right. My mother danced, my father danced, my cousins danced, and my cousins were really good dancers. They were a little older than me, and they watched Soul Train, and they knew the latest dances. And I have an aunt, Aunt Billy, who she was a character. She was such a character. She has such a wonderful spirit. She is still here. I'm not saying she's gone. Mm-hmm. But she was that person that was the life of the party. She was that person. And she had 5 kids that were all my cousins. So I couldn't be in that family if I wasn't going to hit the middle of the dance floor and shake my thing too, because that was a prerequisite growing up. And so being in Inglewood, there were a lot of parties, and there were a lot of, people that came to the areas, like the Black areas, and they wanted the Black kids to dance. So they would come to our elementary school at that point, and they would teach us stuff. So, that was 70s. So we were never remiss in having someone come to our school and say, that kid is good, that kid is good. And somewhere along the line, Lester Wilson, who had choreographed a movie called Saturday Night Fever, had seen me I think I was in junior high by then, and was like, this kid's good. And I have had that through my whole career, which is how grateful I am, because I've been in lots of situations where someone said, that happened with Alvin Ailey later, that kid's good, but that was passion. That was my love of this. I've always loved, to this day, I can decide on a record that I want to do by if it makes me dance in my kitchen. Mm-hmm. If I play the track and I find myself dancing in my kitchen, that track is saying something to me. And and I think you want me to go into how I got on the Soul Train?
Yeah, well, I do. And by the way, that's a great barometer of knowing if something is working, musically for you. If it's got you moving around in the kitchen, absolutely. Yeah, it's a great litmus test.
That's the wiggle.
Yeah, and I do want you to tell the Soul Train story, because I think it's a really interesting story, and also just how naturally you just fell into doing it, once the opportunity came up. I mean, that for me, that's the magic in the story. Yeah,
sometimes, I think through my whole career, this is what I was supposed to do. And there have been times I've tried to stop, but it's been a thing where, as we all do, you get older and you start going, okay, this was a fun ride. Now, what are we really going to do?
Right.
And you start sometimes to understand that there's another opportunity around the corner, because this is what you're supposed to do. You are here. And this thing of Soul Train, I was in high school. I was in, I guess, about the 8th grade, 9th grade. And there was a girl in school, and I was friends with her brother. And the brother knew I was dancing, and we were at I was at a high school dance, and I don't actually know if I was in high school. I might have been 1 year before. And he said, go dance with my sister. Maybe she'll take you on Soul Train. And we all laughed about it. It was like 5 of us. And they all said, yeah, you go dance with her. You go dance with Marcy. And Marcy's a pretty gorgeous girl, and I was scared to just talk to her, let alone dance with her. So they said, no. He said, I'll ask her. So he goes to his sister and says, dance with my friend Eric. And she goes, sure. And we go right to the dance floor. And and I know the latest dances because I've been dancing, and I'm into it. And Marcy's a good dancer. I didn't even remember that she was on Soul Train because I wasn't kind of in that headspace. And do you know, we danced through a couple of records. We danced through a couple of records. And Marcy leaned over and said, you're a good dancer. You should come on Soul Train with me. And I said, okay. Like, it was that simple.
Right.
And I walked over to my friends. She went over to her friends. I went over to my friends, which is what you do when you're young. And my friend said, did she ask you to be on Soul Train? And I said, yes. And they were like, what? And I said, yeah. And they said, when are you going? And I said, Saturday. I mean, it was that simplistic. And so, remember, I'm not old enough to drive. I'm not old enough to do anything but put on some clothes, really, and wait for Marcy to come pick me up on Saturday morning, which she did in her Celica.
And did you dress yourself, or did they have wardrobe at the
No, everything we did was ourselves. So
you already had swagger.
Oh, no, I don't know if I would call it swagger. I have to, well, at the end, I'll tell you what I had on, and I'll tell you why I know what I had on. So she comes to pick me up in her Celica. It's in Hollywood. We drive all the way to Hollywood to Channel 11 Studios, and Hollywood and Gower, which is 2 streets over from Hollywood and Vine. So we're talking Main Hollywood, California. And we go to the door, we go in, they know Marcy. She's like, this is my new partner. And we walk in. Marcy's known there, so everybody's kissing and hugging her and telling her how great she looks. And she's introducing me as her new partner. I must be 15. So I'm just looking at the stage and the set. And standing on the stage in sound check in orange crochet is Aretha Franklin. And I am like, oh, this is real. Like suddenly this whole moment is real. And they clear somebody off the side stage and they put Marcy and I on the side stage, the little riser next to Aretha Franklin. And I am just completely like, okay, okay, and, my mind is thinking, you better dance. You're here. And I will tell you, I was wearing a black jumpsuit with a white T-shirt underneath with a big afro because, God rest her soul, Aretha Franklin just passed away. And they have been showing clips of that episode and clips of when she sat at the piano with Smokey Robinson. And I'm on every one of those clips. And so I get to see 15-year-old me sometimes on the news when they're talking about Aretha, and sometimes on television, and always on YouTube. Uh-oh. So that's kind of what's going on, in my life of looking at the backdrop of my life. So great moment.
Eric, that's so fantastic. I mean, the whole experience that you had as a young man, with being on TV but also just being around other creatives and production and everything, and is really, I think, pretty remarkable. One of the things that you have said to me before about that experience on a personal level is just being around such diversity, other gay dancers, with zero judgment. You've expressed to me that this was a very inclusive experience where Don Cornelius was like, didn't bat an eye about anything or anybody.
He was amazing. He was, it's funny, and I sometimes want to get teary-eyed about realizing that I was 15 years old in front of realizing my sexuality and arriving on Soul Train, not really kind of knowing it. So I had girlfriends and stuff, but I didn't really know where I was going with anything. It's way early and all that. And arriving on the set of Soul Train to, men in tied up shirts with bell bottoms and platforms. And, I remember, it's funny, and I'm friends with this guy to this day, but one of the regular dancers on Soul Train, when I arrived, he went, "Woo, the hottie has arrived." And he was flirting with me while they were miking Aretha. And his female dance partner said, "Stop it. He's so young. Stop that." And Marcy was like, "Yeah, keep your hands off of this one." And it was like this moment where I had realized he likes boys. And I knew that I did too, but I kind of didn't know what I was doing with that situation at that point.
Right.
And all of that energy was going on. The first guy I ever dated was another Soul Train dancer. And I mean, a lot of those things that happened were happening on the set. And Don never had any feelings about any of that. We were there to dance. He was really such a trailblazer for the Black movement at that point. He was so successful. And you have to understand one thing that was really huge for me in that moment of being on the show, because I started dancing with the Chinese girl with long hair, who's the most famous export of that show, Cheryl Song. Right. And the reason I was able to dance, Marcy didn't want to be on the show all the time. It was just too much work for her. And she wasn't, she at the point was getting ready to come out of high school. She was getting ready to go to college. She went on to marry one of the guys that was in the Brothers Johnson, the pop group. Like she's had a great career for herself, wonderful, and we're still friends to this day. And I give so much gratitude to her because she had no idea that she was being instrumental in starting a career for me. And I've been able to thank her many, many times. But picking up the mantle from Marcy was Cheryl's song. And my parents only let me go to Soul Train because they loved Cheryl. They loved her to the point that Cheryl's song was at both of my parents' funerals. Like, they loved her. And when I began to dance with Cheryl, we got an offer to go to American Bandstand, which was the rival show. And we went over to American Bandstand and do one taping, and they put us in the Summer American Bandstand Dance Contest. And Don never batted an eye. He knew that it was more promotion. And when it was over, we were, at that point, one of the most popular dance couples. I would go in the supermarket with my mother, and girls would start screaming. It was like that. Now, mind you, I'm 16 years old. And my mother thinks this is ridiculous. And people are following us around the grocery store. And when we did that American Bandstand thing, that's when kind of my sexuality started to bloom. A young guy flirted with me at American Bandstand. I think you guys know him. His name is Greg Louganis. And he was there as a guest. And so some of that had started, but we eventually, like right away, Don asked us to come back to Soul Train. And I, God rest his soul, but I don't have a whole lot of love for Dick Clark. He wasn't really kind to me or Cheryl. He was a businessman. Right. And we were very, very young. And on the flip side of that, Don treated me with nothing but respect and class and decorum and graciousness. I'm 16 years old. This man is in his 40s. And there's homosexuality, there's drugs. And his thing was, you are here to represent my television show and to trailblaze for the Black community. Keep it together. Don't embarrass anybody. You know what you're here to do. And I know that is the marker of how I have handled the rest of my career, from what Don Cornelius laid as a groundwork for me. And I'm insanely proud that that's my beginning. And I'm even more proud that they've chosen to do a television show now called American Soul, which reflects on the legacy and the strength of Don Cornelius. And it's something that I'm glad we're getting a moment to talk about, because people have called me many times to talk to me about Soul Train. And, what was it like to be there? But Soul Train is not me. I'm a blessing that got to be there. Soul Train is the creation of Don Cornelius. And Don Cornelius created something that is forever in the legacy of American pop culture and gives the Black community something to wear with pride. And it's so important that people recognize that. And it is my charge to continually talk about it in that frame of reference, because the Black community still has problems with homosexuality and things like that. And Don Cornelius never batted an eye. Those many people that you reflect on that came through Soul Train, they were around all of this, and they were nothing but loving and caring and family. And to this day, I get emails and invitations and things from the original Soul Train group. We are all way old now, and they still talk to me with the same love and care and compassion when they did when I was very young. And I'll tell you something, and this is the most important thing to me, that my mother passed away 2 years ago, and the funeral was quite large, and it was early in the morning, and, I'm dealing with my own grief and blah, blah, blah. And when it was over, I had people say to me, did you see who was there? Was that? And it turned out that members of Soul Train that had known me. Now, I don't live in California anymore. That was all California. Had come to my mother's funeral to pay respects because they still saw me as family. This is Soul Train.
That's, it's to Don Cornelius's credit, that not only were you, you had this experience opportunity where in a sense you became a child star, but you were taught the importance of being a role model in the Black community.
Absolutely.
And also, another thing that you said, and just so you know, Eric, this conversation I would love to keep going for 3 or 4 hours, and we easily could. We've got about 20 minutes left of the show. We're past the halfway point, so so I'm going to ask you more things more quickly. But I really appreciate you expanding on all these stories because it's so important. But you're speaking about being a gay man, being a gay Black man, and you have said to me before that that your sexuality needs to be buried because no Black men really have been open to their sexuality publicly. And you gave me a couple of examples last time we had the pleasure of just hanging out in person in New York recently. But Black and gay, you would think of RuPaul or Little Richard, a little bit more over the top flamboyant. White, gay, and married are examples: Elton John, Neil Patrick Harris, Ricky Martin. But there's still this I guess, would you call it a struggle or just part of the journey that? No,
it's a struggle. It's a struggle because there are, Lee Daniels, there are gay, Black, successful men that are trailblazing in front and doing really, really great things.
Well, and you're one of them.
And thank you. And it is something that I'm proud to wear as a mantle because it's something that I want the younger generation to realize that you can be a strong Black businessman, artist in this community without feeling marginalized by your sexuality. It's possible to climb the highest mountains. They try to make a reference that, I love Ru, and I've met RuPaul, and I've known him not in a dress. And, people need to understand that he made a choice with this new talk show that he's doing. I'm not dressing it. He said, I dress in drag for money. That's right. He's really clear. And when he said, I do business as RuPaul. And he is trying to be one of those that says, okay, that's one side of me. That's not all of me. And I think it is a struggle, but it's a fight that's worth fighting for. It is. It just simply is.
Yeah. Well, bravo to you for not that you really have a choice because of the way that you've been brought up, but for just carrying the torch of truth and integrity in everything that you do. Not just in your sexuality, but your performance, your business sense. Just you're like a grown ass. Pretty woke. I was going to say fully woke, but we're all like a work in progress. Woke man. That is not just kind of passing through and taking anything for granted. I've had great leaders. I've had great people stand in front of me and pull my parents to start. I had amazing parents. They're both passed away, but I had amazing parents. I come from an amazing family. But more than any sisters?
No, I'm an only child.
Only child. Okay.
But if you think that there's somebody called Don Cornelius in my path and Roland Petit and, different people that really opened doors for me, Alvin Ailey and the people that were in Alvin Ailey, I was very, very blessed. Even when I came to music and when I came to writing music and things, I was able to meet about 10 years ago, Ricky Minor, who very, big in the music industry, who didn't just kind of go, oh, hi, but said, send me what you're doing. Let me hear what you're doing. Let me know what you're writing. I've been blessed that along this path, people have been good to me, really good to me when they didn't have to be,
That makes me happy to hear that. And let me ask you a couple of questions, and with big questions, short answers, just so I can get through a lot of things that I'm very curious about. You mentioned Alvin Ailey. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. How did you decide to not end up joining the Ailey company, and was that a difficult decision?
I, woo.
Yeah.
So when I became friends with somebody who actually is part of that company still to this day. He's the associate artistic director, and he was very good friends with one of my dance teachers. And so it just very oddly popped up that they did a master class, and there were only 2 dancers that were asked to come and join that. And I thought I was getting it out of friendship. That's just where my mind was. But moreover, the reason that I chose to not take it was I wanted to be in an all-white company. I felt, especially think about it, I was just coming off of all-black television show. Mm-hmm. And whenever
that makes sense. David
Bowie or Elton, whenever someone like that, I danced with a Chinese girl, when they were there, they were the focus. And I wanted to be the focus. And so I thought, when it comes to learning, you're only going to learn more when you're the focus, because they're going to put the heavy weights on your shoulder. Alvin Ailey seemed like I was sliding into what was the norm. And I'd already been taught from Soul Train, you don't go to the norm, you go to the exception. Okay. That's the first thing I learned. So I auditioned for 2 ballet companies and the Winnipeg Contemporary, and they handed me a job, and off to Canada I went.
Well, I admire your courage in doing that, and it makes sense. It seems like a perfectly obvious choice.
Sometimes I wonder, was it courage or ego? I still ask that question of myself. Was that just your ego? Great question. Of wanting to be the chocolate drop in the vanilla vat?
Right. Well, like another, there's so many wonderful things to talk about. One of them, you and I'm not even sure if you know this, but you and I share another experience in addition to, well, let me just get to this experience. You and I both had the privilege and honor of playing for and meeting President Barack Obama. I want to hear your story about that. Yeah, and again, short version, because there's like 30 other things I want to ask you.
Yeah, okay. I was working with a wedding band agent, and they had an office in D.C., and I very kiddingly said, I don't understand why you can't get me on this show. I don't understand. It's like, I'm black, he's black. It seems like a win. And within a week, they called and said, you're going to be playing the inauguration. And I laughed because, remember, the inauguration the second time around was on television. It was on Monday on Martin Luther King's birthday. That was when Beyonce did it, all that other stuff. What many people don't know is the actual inauguration took place on Sunday, because in the Constitution, it has to be on a particular day. So that, it's like a contract that runs out.
Yes.
Well, so they had an enormous inauguration party on Sunday, and Barack asked for Stevie Wonder to be the musical guest. And we were chosen, the band I was in was chosen to be the opening act for Stevie Wonder. And when we finished our show, I was trying to run off the stage to get all the sweat off of me, because I was going to meet this man if it killed me. So I was singing the last song. We took our bows. I had already planned my exit. I was seeing these stairs that I was going to run down so that I could get to the dressing room, get out of these clothes really fast.
Right, always have an exit plan.
Right, and turn the corner. I'm going to beat all the other entertainers. That's where my head is. And turn the corner and go to walk down the stairs, and at the bottom of the stairs is Barack, Michelle, Joe, and Jill Biden waiting to come up the stairs, and I'm going down.
Remarkable. And
he says to me, wow, we get to meet the star of the show first. You were amazing. What do you say? What can you say?
That's it.
And my pet peeve is being sweaty. So I'm really kind of freaked. Because I'm meeting somebody I idolize, and I'm covered in sweat.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Full Diva came out. Right.
Yeah. But so, yeah, that's my moment. And he was gracious and wonderful. They, all 4 of them. And, I have a little tidbit for everybody out there, is that they'd had a couple of drinks. Because they were really happy.
Yeah.
So they were really hee ha ha, something that no one ever really gets to see. It was great. It was really great.
I'm so happy you had that experience. I'll tell you more later on mine, but the overall is that I found him to be one of the most direct, communicative, completely present, gracious people that I've ever met.
Yes.
It was really a privilege.
Yes,
let's go extreme now to something else. You were the lead vocalist for the Chippendales World Tour for a few years, and which is amazing. And you have said that there was an array of drugs, women showing up in your bed, backstage fights between the guys, private planes, Swiss bank accounts. I mean, like everything. What's your takeaway from that whole experience?
Stay away from men that use steroids.
Yeah,
Stay far away. Just even as friendships, stay away from that. But you know what? I realized that I got to live inside of the outrageousness of what a lot of money does, and I'm grateful for that experience because it was like being on a rock and roll tour. I can only imagine what the Rolling Stones were like in the 70s or 60s, you know what I mean? Because that's all this was. This was, girls would go to the hotel desk and say, I'm his girlfriend. I came to visit him from blah, blah, blah. And I lost the key to our room. And they'd hand her a key to my room. And I'd open my room and there'd be a naked girl laying in my bed. And okay. And it would be a girl that I just saw in the audience.
Oh, so they spotted you and chose you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We one time we were playing Rochester because it was a world tour. We played Rochester and we came into our dressing room and there was a naked girl laying on our dressing table where the makeup is, covered in fruit, pineapples. And she's like, I'm here, boys. You can do whatever you want to do to me. Like, it was unreal. But remember, lots of drugs, lots of drinking, lots of sex, and lots of money. And if you ever, people can go on to look at the story of Chippendales. They actually did a story about the man who discovered Chippendales, who eventually hung himself in jail. Mm-hmm. And you get the story of how that transpired and what happened. But my takeaway, don't do that again.
But you did indulge in a few things, I'm guessing, and live to tell the story, and I hope no regrets. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I indulge in a lot, and I did live to tell the tale. But I have to tell you, one of the things that's different, I'm sure this is the same for you, when you've been brought up as a studied artist and you love your craft, there's only but so far you go. You're not going to really ruin your body with drugs, because you still have to go on stage every night. And I was a singer. And so, I learned what 2 hits of cocaine does to the voice right before the show. I had to learn those kind of things the hard way.
Right.
So it really teaches you that doesn't work for me. I'm always amazed when there are artists that can arrive on stage stoned. I'm like, how do you do that? Because all of my stuff stops working.
Right.
My dance ability, my singing voice, like everything kind of shuts down and says, buddy, we're in party mode, so there's no work getting ready to happen here. So, that's always been my charge, is that I've taken care of. I'm never going to pretend like I didn't do anything. I had to learn the hard way, like a lot of artists. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of how it went.
Well, unfortunately, you survived and you learned the lessons that you needed to learn. There's 2 things I want to ask you very quickly before we get to the closing questions. We've got about 5 minutes left in the show, which is crazy. One is about diversifying as your career grows, because you've told me, quote, you don't like being shoved into the black soul bucket as an artist. And how do you, literally in just 2 sentences, what's your response to that?
Take every challenge. Take every challenge. And one of the things I've done, you continually recreate yourself. And the only way you can recreate yourself is to believe in yourself the first time. It's the only way. If you believe in what you did the first time, you can recreate a whole new version of you. You can.
Fantastic. Let's talk, same thing, 2 or 3 sentences, money and prosperity. How do you know your worth? Because you, myself as well, we get paid various fees, some very large, some not so large for the same work. How do you know your worth? How do you maneuver through that?
Oh, that's a toughie, because sometimes I feel like I don't know my worth. Sometimes I still feel like I may deserve more. But as I age, I slow down, and I try to have a gratitude that I've gone this long. And so that's what I remind people about my worth. It's been a long road, and I'm not willing to beat myself up anymore to stay on that road. I've learned, and you guys were talking about it earlier, I live in the country because I want to breathe fresh air and play with my dog and do that. I think your worth is taking care of yourself, not the cash, or it's learning to use those things to take care of yourself, and so that the road continues, because otherwise the road will stop.
Right. And
that's part of recreating yourself as well. You lived on really, a lot of us, you live on very little to start, and you kind of live on very little to end, if you think about it.
Yeah. Eric, my closing questions, there's 3 of them. The first is a 2-part question, because the show is called Making It, and you've already started to answer this. What does making it mean to you, both personally and professionally? And the second part of the question is, can you share 3 tips for success that have driven your career?
I have to say, making it is being able to look back at your career choices and feel pride and gratitude. More than anything, gratitude. Gratitude at the people that lifted you up when they didn't have to. That's making it. I am able to look backwards with a smile. I don't have a whole bunch of regrets and anger. I feel really good. My name isn't superstar, but I'm really grateful that this was the path. And my first and foremost tip to everyone out there is gratitude, about being able to express your gift to others. That's the first part, because to sing, someone has to listen. To dance, someone is watching, and to take what is coming from you and sharing it, because this isn't about giving it, it's about sharing it. Everyone shares. I think one of the most important things of longevity is recreating yourself. And we talked about that a moment ago. I'm in the process of that right now again. And I remember when this started, it's just started maybe about 6 months ago. With some changes, my mother passed away. And I remember going, not again. That was the beginning. Like, really? There's already been 18 versions of me. And then I sat down and went, and what's wrong with another? What's wrong with another?
There you go.
And lastly, I think humble. I think you have to be grateful and humble and sharing, so that someone else that's on your path, lift them up because other people have lifted you up. And I feel wonderful. This Facebook gets crazy, and I love writing wonderful things to other artists on Facebook. It fills me with pride to say to another artist, do your thing, go. I'm just so excited when I get to say something positive. That really is, to me, the gift that keeps on giving. It really is.
And in our last literal 30 seconds, at this point of your life, Eric, with everything that you know to be true, what would you tell your younger self?
It's all going to be okay. It may not look, smell, think, feel anything like you thought, but God's got you. God's got you. And you knew that from the beginning. So just rely on it all the way through, because he's got you.
Eric Red, you are a gift. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective and story. And
thank you for having me. This was so much fun. It's Absolutely. So refreshing. I've had a great time. Thank you.
Everybody go to iTunes for the new remix single of Push, and go to ericred.com, ERICRED.com. Thanks for spending the hour with us. We'll see y'all next week.
Tune in again next week for another great episode of Making It with Terry Woolman.